So Bitcoin hits a new all-time high as the SEC approves all Bitcoin spot ETFs. Hello?
Hi, Nick.
Hi, you all right?
Yeah, I'm good. Bitcoin hasn't hit a new all-time high.
Really? But all those influencers were telling us that as soon as the Bitcoin spot ETF were approved, that essentially would be up at new all-time highs.
Yeah, I don't know what to tell you, Nick, but that isn't what's happened.
Fine, I guess I'll get back to recording.
All right, take care.
Bye. So apparently, Bitcoin hasn't hit new all-time highs. Let's roll that intro and get right down into it. Okay, guys, so as we can see here on the Bitcoin chart, we haven't really had much of anything happen since the Bitcoin spot ETFs were approved. We obviously did tap into our high up here on the fake news. That one actually was sat right up here at the 47,972, right? We then obviously saw a big move to the downside. I went through this yesterday. In this short period of time, we saw a couple of different things occur. We saw, first of all, the low coming on in at $44,748. We bounced up a little bit, then we came back down again, 44,300. We did rally up just a fraction, as you can kind of see right up here. And this one coming in at the 47,695. Now, that one there happened to be yesterday at 11 p.m., so a little bit after we got the news around the Bitcoin spot ETFs, but ultimately nothing major, hasn't broken the previous high and has come on down. So we have a lower high and lower lows here on our 1 hour time frame. So we know that not a lot of activity has been going on from a Bitcoin point of view. I guess a lot of people are going to speculate to say, look, we can't expect it automatically once those Bitcoin spot ETFs are approved. We need to see, a couple of days or so before institutions just start piling on into the market, and we're going to see new all-time highs for Bitcoin. Well, I'm going to be very skeptical about that because I don't think that a lot of these institutions are as wealthy as they are by making foolish investment choices, by FOMOing in after Bitcoin's already rallied to such significant levels. So I've spoken about this a number of times, and I expect it still to remain true that we will be seeing, more than likely anyway, a sell-off event rather than anything else. I do not expect large institutional investors to just FOMO into Bitcoin at the $45,000 level, for example. I would expect them to be thinking, actually, no, I'll wait for better times. Ultimately, the economy right now is not really in favor of risk on assets. That really is only viable once we actually see interest rates decreasing rather than increasing. So I think from an institutional level investment point of view, we need to see people in these institutions do their due diligence and whether or not Bitcoin spot ETFs actually align to their investment strategies. And whether or not a high-risk asset at this point in the wider, bigger, economic climate is something that they're going to want to do. These are things that I don't think a lot of influencers across the social media platforms are really taking into consideration. So let's go ahead and take a look at the daily time frame for Bitcoin, right? Because it is interesting to see how the price action has been going along here. We can see higher highs and higher lows on our daily time frame. And again, a lot of bullish people will say that's really positive. I'm more of the opinion that actually this is likely to actually get retested and break over a longer period. Simply put, it's because we see, let me actually go ahead and remove that. We see that there's weakness within the structure for this. So with overlapping candlesticks, this is not a trend, and this basically becomes a very short-term corrective pattern. Higher highs, higher lows with an overlapping candlestick pattern like this has a higher tendency to want to break on down than break on up. So on a daily time frame, it doesn't give me a lot of confidence. Now, ultimately, on a daily time frame here, we can find that the 50 EMA and the 50 SMA has been good support, right? The yellow line, as you can see on the chart here, comes in at 42,286. This is the 50 simple moving average, and it has been working quite well as a good level of support for BTC at the moment. Underneath that, we do have the red line. That is the 50 exponential moving average at $42,031. Again, you can see for the last little while here, these two have been good anchors and support levels for BTC, really coming back from October 2023. If we were to lose these two key areas of support, the 50 SMA and the 50 EMA, then of course we are going to be looking more towards our trend filter, which comes in on that 200 EMA. The 200 EMA, as it stands today, is at $34,610. And I think this is really the main area of support for Bitcoin. It's kind of like the lifeline, if you will, of BTC. Now, the 200 EMA is going to be your main area of support for Bitcoin. And you can see price action is gravitated quite high above that 200 EMA at the moment on the daily time frame. So the 50 EMA and the 50 SMA are great, but if you do lose those, there's a huge gap essentially between the 50 EMA, 50 SMA and the 200 EMA. And it's that gap that we're going to potentially find a lot of the retail investment basically bleeding out, lots of liquidity being drained out of the market. So this is an interesting point for us. Now, if we throw on some smart money concepts here, you can also see that there's a fair value gap right down here as well. And also you can see a little bit deeper than that, just underneath that 200 EMA, the $30,000 to $33,000, we have another fair value gap down here as well. Equilibrium is sat at about 35,000 to 36,500, and equilibrium is a good place for support to be found as well. This also happens to coincide with a little mini consolidation that we saw back in November of 2023. So ultimately, I'm taking a look at the market here and saying to myself, it's very unlikely that we're going to see a sustained growth for BTC. I think on the short to medium term, we need to be expecting a bit of a pull to the downside. This is not to say that we cannot rally up to 48, 50,000, because we potentially could on the back of some FOMO from retail investors who maybe were asleep when the news broke. But ultimately, my expectations are that we actually are likely and more likely to see moves to the downside than we are to the upside. I've been saying this for quite some time, and I've been speculating that actually Bitcoin spot ETFs are going to be nothing more than a sell the news event, as we had spoken about this on a number of different occasions. And as you can see here with the previous fundamental news breaking for the Coinbase IPO or the futures ETF, here we have Bitcoin spot ETFs, and again we are likely to see the same thing unfolding again. I'm going to move that over here to the 8th of January, as that is where it happened. Okay, now as we can see historically on all of these events, we've seen a negativity on this weekly chart. The futures ETF was pretty static for about 4 weeks before it eventually did actually have an impact on the market, and we can say that it held up quite well before in a huge impact to the downside. The Coinbase IPO was more instantaneous, but it did rally up a little bit before falling all the way back down. Again, we're talking about 4 weeks after the event on both of these occasions when we actually started to see a significant decrease in the price action of BTC. So here we are with the Bitcoin spot ETF, and I reckon, another 4 weeks and we might actually start to see that negativity sinking in with a bigger sell the news event when people start to realize the price action just simply isn't coming, and Bitcoin just simply isn't rallying up towards that area of new all-time highs, as so many people in the space were speculating. It is unfortunate, but I think this is something that we need to see. And actually, I believe that a correction in the market is actually a lot healthier than a continued run to the upside. It will allow us to push up harder and further if we have a correction now than if we were to have a correction later. Ultimately, we need to see those profits getting taken. We need to see the cooling off occur. We need to see momentum, and we need to see fresh money coming into the market. For these things to happen, usually you have to see these nice healthy corrections, 20, 30, maybe even 40%, before we start to see those significant surges to the upside. If we just just surge to the upside, new money is going to be hesitant to come on in. And of course, that we're talking about here is institutional level investment. They don't want to be paying premium prices. So ultimately, they are going to be more likely to invest if prices are to cool off. And it's really there, once those investors are in, that we see parabolic moves for Bitcoin rather than these overlapping structures that we have seen so far. So ultimately, it's great to see all these Bitcoin spot ETFs approved, but I still align to very much what I've been talking about for the last few months, which essentially is that the first 3 months of the Bitcoin spot ETFs are going to be quite turbulent. Afterwards, though, I do expect price action to actually start representing new money coming on in, which will only really happen once these institutions have reviewed Bitcoin spot ETFs, done their own due diligence, and actually have a strategy for investing into this particular vehicle. Let me know what your thoughts are in the comments down below, and I urge you guys to check this video out here where I am discussing what I think is likely to happen in Q1 of the Bitcoin halving.